welcome to the Fundamentals of Lute Playing. My name is Laudon Schuett, and today we're going to be continuing with our series on bars. If you've already completed episode 1 on basic bars and episode 2 on partial bars, I think it flows very nicely into our next topic, which is hinge bars. And in fact, if you've done the partial bar episode, you've already sort of done some hinges. You've already worked a little bit on what a hinge is, and now what we're going to do is we're just going to add the motion in there. So on its most basic level, a hinge bar is, if you think of it like a door opening or closing, it is being in a strict bar and then coming out, or being out of a bar and coming in, but having it already sort of prepared with the finger. And I'll show you what I mean. So for example, if I have a D minor chord down, so I've got a bar on the 2nd fret covering 5 courses. 4th finger is on the 3rd course D, 2nd finger is on the 2nd course F, and then I'm playing the high A, which is covered by the bar. So I'm playing this really beautiful. You can throw in the other A here too if you want. So we've got a bar with the 1st finger here, but let's say in the music you're playing, the next note you need is an open G, but you want to continue holding those voices below, in particular the bass note, and maybe you want to hold the tenor or alto voice or something like that. This is probably the same voice, the F going to G, so you probably don't need to hold the F, but the 2 Ds, and then maybe if you've got the A there, you want to hold. So let me show you how to do that. And you'll see that I'm lifting the bass of my finger, and I'm going to turn to the side so you can see that. When I'm going, it's like this. There you go. Turn to the side. I didn't quite have my foot in a good spot and got a little buzz in there. So that's really, really useful. And we can do this both ways. So for example, if I played, now that was a situation where the higher voice, the soprano, needs to change to a different note while holding the bass. You could of course have the opposite situation where you need the high note to be held and the low note. So we've got the high note still ringing, and the low note is changing. And here I'll show you that from the side. And this I think is a little trickier. You just have to keep that pressure down on the base of the finger. Get that. I'm holding those voices as I go. So being able to get in and out of that bar can be a little tricky. One thing I think that I notice when people first start doing this is they'll do the hinge, but they'll lose the note, and then it kind of breaks the whole point of the hinge. So what I mean is that, for example, if we go back to the version where we hold the bass note and we play a high note like that, sometimes people will lift their finger and lose that bass note, and it'll look like they're doing everything right. They're sort of going like this, and that bass note has stopped. It's kind of hard for me to imitate that mistake, having trained it out, but I'll imitate it with the right hand. So they lift, and they sort of lose that bass note. So make sure that pressure remains. I think it's a lot harder to do going the other way, so making sure. You almost have to listen to the thing you're not doing. So you're actively changing a note, but you need to keep some attention on that note that you're holding, which becomes this sort of balancing act, and it's very tricky. So you may want to just work on the motion first. In the previous bar video, I had you guys working on partial bars, and what you could do is you could just practice with that same exercise. You've got your partial bar, and then oh, I know, that sounds kind of... There's a little better. And then drop it, and then go the other way, like that. And you could play around and do that. Some other little things that can arise. I mean, this just gives you more options when you're attempting to deal with contrapuntal textures, and I think it's really, really nice. That covers about half of the things you're going to run into in terms of hinge bars. The other way you can approach the hinge bar is getting into it. So that's what I just showed you, were examples of being in a bar and sort of opening the door or opening the hinge. What I'm going to show you next is a hinge bar that starts with the door open and we close it. So for example, if I had to play an open fourth course, F, and an A, normally you'd play that like this. I mean, of course, why not do that? But let's say the next chord you need is something like that D minor chord, right? And so that's a really hard thing to get smooth. You can kind of hold it and then at the last minute jump. But once you get really comfortable with starting with a hinge, so I put the base of my index finger down, and then, and you can play around with where, because that does make a difference, and I'll show you from the side again. Make sure I'm in a good position here. So if I've got this, and then I drop, and I suppose you could do the same thing in reverse. I think this is actually the easiest thing to do, but everybody's going to be a little bit different, is that you play a chord, or let's pick a different chord so it matches a little better. Something like that. So I'm playing some variant, either an E minor chord or an E minor chord, and then I need the next note A, like that. But I want to keep things ringing. Oh, there's a better example. So I've got this little bar here, and I drop it like that. And then that way I'm keeping that inner voice ringing, inner voices, the B and the G, and then I'm dropping that down. So these sort of things are often very situational. I'm working on a piece right now where I go from this chord, I won't play the whole passage, but you end up getting here, and then I have to pop out of it, and I'll show that to you from the side. This is from a little canzone by Terzi. And then you're going to go, and it's that lift from here to there, which is kind of interesting. And you can do it technically without the hinge. I could do something where I'm just going, but I lose that note, that high note, and it ends up being more awkward. So you can think of hinge bars as being, at first, they're a little intimidating, because, trying to put the base of your finger down like this and then dropping it. This is a great one. F and A going to G and B flat. If you had to do something like that. That can feel really awkward at first, but once you master it, it can really give you another option, another way to smooth things out. There's a passage in the same piece which is really nice. You've got two D's being played, so these are, well, technically four D's because of the courses, right? So D, 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 and it's all unisons. And the next note, and then my first finger is stuck down here in the bass holding a D, and then the next note I need is an E. Now maybe I could stretch and do something, it's just so awkward. But if I want to be really strict, and actually this is a great passage because I go in and out of the bar. So here's me going, and then out. And I'll show that to you from the side. Really, really cool passage. So, chord, drop the bar, play a note, lift the bar for the open G, and then drop it again. So it's actually a pretty involved little passage there. And it's just to keep those voices ringing and to keep everything smooth. we're definitely getting into some more advanced techniques here. So if you're a beginner and you're watching this video and you're still working on the first video of bars, you may need to back off from this and not worry about it too much. Like I said, it's situational. It's one of those things that you'll start seeing opportunities for it in the music. And the more comfortable you are with it, the more it's just a tool that will help you, especially I find in contrapuntal pieces, but it can also be really helpful in dances. You know, you never know, you might have a situation where you're just kind of, and that's way easier for whatever reason than doing some other fingering. So it'll be useful in all of your music, but I found in particular for contrapuntal pieces, things like fantasies and ricacars and toccatas, very, very helpful for maintaining voices. I will freely admit that this was something that I kind of put off working on until, I don't know, maybe the last 4 or 5 years. I really, my classical guitar background, they're not quite, or at least when I was training, it wasn't quite as common to emphasize hinge bars. And really, Paul Odette, my lute teacher, was the first person I saw just using hinge bars all the time. And I have to admit that I just, at first, I felt really clumsy with them, and I did everything I could to avoid them. I do absolutely wacky fingerings, you know, something where I go across, and there are times when those fingerings are great, and they are, and I will do a video on some unusual left-hand techniques, but I do think that once you get comfortable with this, it's a wonderful tool for smoothing your music out. So to review, what I would say is it's situational. You're going to run into it in the music, but the things you're going to see, the most common types are ones where the bar is already down and you have to lift to get the high voice, or you have to lift to get the low voice. And of course, the goal is to keep the other voices ringing. It's no good if you let go of everything as you go. And then the other form of the hinge bar is one where you're preparing. It's you know, hinge bar, prepared bar, whatever you want to call it. But the idea is you don't need a bar for this chord, but you're helping to set up the next chord that's coming. And so getting comfortable with using the base of your finger to do that is really helpful. And of course, it can go the other way. You could have a situation where you might have something like, I don't know, just make something up here. Maybe I'm going... I'll just do something like that. Start with the dissonance. You could also have it where you're preparing it from the other side. I find this to be more rare, so that's kind of why this maybe is like really in the 1%, but it's a good thing to know. So for example, let's say I've got an A in the bass and I've got a G up top. So we'll say this was prepared like that. And then I'm lowering the bass there. So that's just the opposite of starting from the bass and lowering, or starting from the tip and lowering. So getting really, really good at this just gives you a whole new tool set. And we get into, it's not, you can do some exercises on it, but what you're going to find is that when you go into the music, each situation is so unique that you kind of have to individualize it. So if any of you have any questions or comments, or maybe you've run into some spots and you're like, hey, can I use a hinge bar here? Is this a good spot? Toss it up in the comments section, and we will kind of look at it, see if that is a good spot, or maybe there's a good alternative. Things get really, really fun at this level because it's all about working out in this moment of music what is the best solution. That passage that I played for you a few moments ago where I went like this, somebody may look at it and they go, well, do we really need to double those two Ds? And on a contrapuntal level, I'd say yes, but maybe someone might decide, I just don't want to play those. And then you just have that one bar, and you could probably even avoid that. And that sounds quite nice, right? Compared to playing what is exactly written, right? This has a little more awkwardness in it, but that is what is indicated in the music. But as a performer, you might decide, you know, that's not worth it. I'd rather do that. And there are some nice things about that. The alto voice on the second beat gets held. So lots of complicated things start to arise as we really get farther into our journey as musicians. So don't be afraid to ask any questions. Don't be afraid to put some comments up. I hope you are enjoying the channel. We have one more video on bars, I think, which is just going to be talking about playing with other fingers, you know, being able to use your second finger, being able to use your third finger. And I think that will end our bar series. If you're enjoying the channel, the best way you can support it is to subscribe. I'll also put a link to my Patreon in the description. If you'd like to support in that way, it's always welcome. Happy looting, happy practicing, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.